It's good to have you back. Now, the final state capture report devoted around 250 pages to wrongdoing at the embattled passenger rail agency of South Africa. Chief Justice Raymond Zondo made damning findings against the rail agency's former senior executives, and the State Capture Commission is now calling for a special commission of inquiry into allegations of corruption at Prasa. So let's get some reaction now to this. Joining us is railway expert David Williams. David, good morning to you, and thank you so much for your time. Now, I mean, the 250 pages dedicated alone to Prasa, the wrongdoing and the irregularities found there, the actions of some of the former senior executives, actually has warranted, again, Chief Justice to call for a special inquiry looking into Prasa alone. How do you think the railway agency found itself in this position? How did we get here?
Well, it's significant. The picture that you happened to show before you started talking to me was of a passenger train with rails in the foreground, and the rails are rusted. And I think that sums up completely what has happened to the rail agency. This is not a one-off. It's not one man who's been behaving badly. This is a decline that goes back 10, 15 years. And certainly the Zondo Commission and other reports, like the Public Protector in 2014, she put out a report called Derailed. That was when Thuli Madonsela was the Public Protector. In that report alone, there is enough to justify prosecution of people. Zondo has simply confirmed and given more detail from witnesses about what was generally known. I think what's significant about this report is two things. One is that it contains so much damning evidence, including quoting court cases, the Public Protector and so on, quoting documents about illegal procurement procedures, corruption at high level. One can't understand why prosecutions of Prasa people haven't happened already. It's not as if this evidence is new, although there is more detail. The second issue is Zondo has called for another inquiry, a more detailed inquiry, which suggests that the Chief Justice, as he is now, thinks that there's more to come. So this indicates, apart from all the interesting detail and upsetting detail, because we have a passenger rail network that's destroyed here, apart from all that, we have detail which, again, hasn't come to light. This indicates an organization where the rot runs deep.
And speaking of that rot, who exactly is responsible for it? David, you mentioned that, the wrongdoing goes as far back as 10 years ago. But of course, when we look at the state capture report, also the Public Protector's report, who should be prosecuted, who should be investigated so that we could, of course, hold someone accountable?
Well, there are lots of names, and one would have thought if good governance processes were in place, the board of Prasa would have taken action long ago against individuals. You don't have to have a watertight criminal case to take disciplinary action. Now, some of those people have been dismissed, disciplined, expelled, and so on from Prasa. But there are a few individuals. As I say, I think the rot runs deep. Lucky Montana, who was the chief executive about 7, 8 years ago for several years, he is named several times in the report. The report also quotes court cases talking about him standing aside and allowing corruption to happen. So clearly he has a lot of questions to answer. He is one person who has been identified. One would think also that the board at the time of the worst of the state capture activities, the corrupt activities, one would have thought that the board must also be culpable here. And in terms of company law, and because this is a company, it's not a government department, it's a company which answers to the government, one would have thought there was enough evidence there to take the board members. And if you read the King Governance Codes, board members can be liable for criminal activity.
With that being said, David, as well, I see the Chief Justice here taking it a step further, saying both the ANC and Parliament need to be, held accountable for not almost, for rather abandoning the board of Prasa and not ensuring that they also execute the work they're supposed to do. Make us understand the role here that was meant to be played by both the ANC and Parliament, which, according to the Zondo Commission report, they failed.
Well, the key figure there is Popo Molefe, who was the Premier of the Northwest Province. He was a great struggle veteran in the 1980s and 90s, 70s too. And he was appointed at the board, and he started, according to Zondo, he told Zondo this, that he started trying to find out what was going on and to hold people accountable. And in the report, Zondo quotes Popo Molefe going to the ANC top 6. This is in the report. He says he went to the ANC top 6. He was very concerned in particular about property transactions, money going into people's account, executives' accounts. And he said he wanted to take this problem on and do something. And I suppose, in effect, he wanted to know whether he had their support. And his view in the report is that they did not support him, or did not say that they weren't supporting him, but just did nothing about what he had said. And he said he was very disappointed with that. And that's partly why Zondo has come with this finding. He also says that the present President Cyril Ramaphosa, he says, should have done more, he was the deputy president for much of that time. In terms of governance, again, the minister and the president, now the president, the view of Zondo is that they should also be held accountable for what happened. The other aspect is there's been no board, an acting board for several years under this regime, and no full-time chief executive. When Montana was dismissed, I think in 2014 or 2015, there has not been a full-time chief executive until last year. And Mr. Matthews was appointed, a son of a struggle veteran, Joe Matthews, and has been dismissed by Prasa. And there's a big battle going on there. Who's running the organization is difficult to tell. And, of course, the trains are not running.
Yeah, they're not running. And some of the companies that I see there, again, the Chief Justice placing on the spotlight includes Swifambo Rail Leasing and eNCA Technologies. And I see this recommendation, again, you mentioned the president saying he needs to speed up those investigations, so at least, inform the Hawks to speed up their investigations around the irregular awarding of multi-billion tenders to both companies, Swifambo Rail Leasing as well as eNCA Technologies. In terms of those two companies placed on the spotlight, David, what do you make of current investigations into how they were awarded these tenders?
Well, again, it's hard to tell what the prosecuting authorities are going to do, but there's no doubt, again, in the Zondo report, there's no mystery about the details. There are specific numbers where executives were told to pay money into the ANC's own account on the grounds that such a big contract deserved some kind of commission for the ANC, is the implication. I think the number there is 79 million rand. And we're not talking, a few hundred rand and a bottle of whiskey here. This is billions of rand. I think the other thing is that the country, everyone, the media, us, have become inured to this. If this had happened on its own, just the report on Prasa, the 250 pages, as you say, on Prasa that Zondo has issued, and it's worth going through it and reading the appalling detail. If it had just been that report that we were talking about now, it would be a national scandal. But there's also Transnet, there's also Eskom, there's the State Security Agency, there's so many places where the state capture tentacles have reached. So I don't see how the prosecuting authorities and the police, the Hawks, even if you put up a specialized unit, how they can deal with all this and what they prioritize. And I think the NPA is trying to prioritize. They're trying to nail some people for some things to get things going, but it's massive. And I think we've become stunned by the scale and the scope of this corruption.
Well, I have to leave it there. I appreciate you speaking to me about this. Railway expert David Williams, I appreciate your time this morning.